Hi, and welcome to Model Railroad Academy. I'm Ron Marsh, a contributor here at Model Railroad Academy and your host for today. And today we're going to be talking about an important scenery topic, specifically how to model realistic cornfields. Now, scenery is one of the things that really helps us to set the stage for our trains on our model railroad layouts. And there are a lot of different kinds of scenery, from industrial scenes where we may be conducting operations, to city and urban kinds of scenes, to open country scenes. And those can take on a lot of different kinds of character. Personally, I grew up on a farm in the Midwest, and so where the farm meets the rails has always been something that's been of great interest and fascination to me. And so I like modeling farm types of scenery, as well as things like grain elevators, feed mills, things like that serve the farm but are also served by rail. Well, one of the types of farm scenes that is very prevalent and could fit on almost any layout is the cornfield. Corn is literally grown in all 50 states, so if you're modeling anywhere in the U.S., you probably could find some space for a cornfield in the scenery or along the background of your layout. And for me in particular, I'm in the process of building some new scenery for my layout, and a farm scene and a cornfield was going to be an important part of that. Now, there are a number of different manufacturers that make different models that can help us to model corn. And there are lots of those available, a wide variety of them in HO scale. They're a little more limited in N scale. There have been several over the years. But on the market right now in particular, that maybe is the most popular, the most well-known, are these Bluford Shop cornfields. Now, these are injection molded corn rows and corn stalks. And I'm going to show you what these look like today. And I'm also going to show you how to prepare them in order to make them look a little less plastic, a little less toy-like, and like fantastic models as we plant them on our layout. So we're going to be doing some work here at the workbench to prepare these so that we can see just how to make them look great on our layout. So I'm going to turn the camera down to the workbench now, and we're going to get started. Now, this is what the Bluford Shop cornfields look like as they come out of the box. Again, they're an injection molded set of corn rows, and each sprue has 4 short corn rows on the sprue, and the box comes with 14 sprues of corn rows, at least in N scale. And so this is a great start for modeling a cornfield for our layout. Now, as we look at these, obviously, again, injection molded plastic, they are monotone, they're one color of green, and left as they are, they certainly would represent a cornfield, but they're kind of monotone and tend to look kind of all the same a little bit. So we're going to do some things to help these out just a little bit. But first we need to get these cut out of the sprue, and then we're going to talk a little bit about some things about how we'll set them on the layout. Now, each of these corn rows, each corn stalk is connected to an injection gate, and then there are 4 injection gates along the base. We don't want to cut the corn stalks away from the base. That's how we're going to mount them on the layout that holds them together. But we want to cut them from the injection gates and then cut the base from these large injection gates. So whatever you use as a sprue cutter will work here. So the finer the better. In my case, I've got this flush cutting tweezer type of sprue cutter, and this works really, really well for fine parts like this. And I want to leave all of the stalk that I possibly can, but cut it just as it starts to widen out into these injection gates. So I'm going to cut these. I've already started cutting this one loose, but I've got a few here left to cut, and I'm just going to cut them away from the injection gates there, like that. And then, of course, we have to cut them away from the larger ones down here at the bottom, and I've got a couple of those to cut yet too. And as we do, then we come up with a single corn row that looks like this. Now you'll notice on these that one side of the corn row, the base, has 3 holes, mounting holes, The other side has 3 mounting pins that fit together. I want to say something about that before we go any further, because it might seem natural for us to want to take these and just mount them together side by side like so, as the pins and holes would line up. But as we do that, all of our stalks tend to line up, and you'll see right there, it almost masks the fact that there are 2 rows there unless we look at it at an angle. However, if we take that back apart and if we stagger these so that this hole goes in the center pin, and then this hole lines up on the end, then the next row would kind of line up, here, and we would cut them off at whatever point. Then you'll notice here on this center part, those corn stalks are staggered, and it makes our cornfield look much, much fuller. So that's just a thought. Again, that's for a little later as you're actually installing this on the layout, but something that you might want to think about as you're preparing that. Another thing that can be helpful, especially if these are going to be up a little bit closer to the front, and you're going to be seeing them up close, the individual stalks have some texture. The leaves are twisted and turned different ways, but generally they're kind of flat. So one of the things that you might want to do is take these. You can use some tweezers, or you can just grab them with your hand and just give them a little bit of a twist. Some of the individual stalks, you don't twist them all the same way. Don't twist them all the same amount, but just twist them a little bit, and it's going to make them look a little less uniform and a little more varied from one corn stalk to the next. That will help the realism a lot as well. It's going to give it a lot more texture and variety as we look at the corn itself. Now, let's talk a little bit about paint, because again, these are monotone. They're green, but they're one color of green. The base is also green. So first thing we want to talk about is this base, because the ground underneath the corn would not be green; it would be brown. What I like to do with these is when I install them on the layout, I like to, after they are snapped together and ready to go on the layout, I like to put some dirt. I use real dirt that I sift onto it, or you can also use a earth-colored ground foam just to get down in right along that base to cover that green up. But it's difficult to completely cover that green, so it's a good idea to have an earth color underneath. And so for that, we're going to paint this base a brown color. Now, almost any brown color will do if you're going to apply dirt on top of that base. I like to use a fairly light color. Soil in the Midwest, in the areas that I model, also in the Mid-South, the soil, when it's dry, tends to be fairly light in color, almost a tan color. When it's wet, then it's a lot darker, like a mud. So the color that I'm actually using today, again, you can use almost any brown, and you can use a variety of kinds of paint. For this, I'm just using an inexpensive craft paint. This is Deco Art paint. You can buy this at Walmart or craft stores for about $1 a bottle. This particular one is a country maple. And these hobby paint, these craft paints tend to be a little thick. So for this application, I mixed just a little bit of water in with my paint. And I'm going to work on this corn row right here. I got a fine brush and a little bit of this paint in a palette, and I'm just going to get a little on there. And I'm going to paint just the base. I don't want to paint the sides of the base because I'm going to be gluing them together. If I get a little paint on there, it's okay, but I don't need to completely paint the sides. Just want to mostly get some brown on the top. I also want, as much as possible, to avoid getting the brown on the stalks. I'm keeping my brush flat down in contact with the base itself, and maybe getting just a little bit of paint on the bottoms of the stalks, but we will touch that up a little bit later. And again, this doesn't have to be perfect, and it doesn't have to be perfectly consistent, because we're just modeling dirt here. You can see I've already painted the other end of this one before I started the show here. We'll come back on this side and just touch up along the parts of the stalks that I couldn't reach from the other side, like so. I'm going to wipe off the excess from the sides with my finger. And there you see we've got a nice coat of brown paint just to kind of be a backdrop for the dirt and keep that green from shining through. Now, the next thing I want to do is I want to add some variety to the green of the stalks. Now, I am modeling late July corn. So that would be the time in which corn typically is green. It's typically a dark green, and it's starting to tassel on the top. And so the tops are a light yellow or tan color. So I want to apply some paint that's going to give me some variety to this green. Now I'll use the green that I have here, but I'm going to choose a couple of greens that are one shade lighter and one shade darker than this, just to add some variety to it. In particular, I've got some old poly scale paint around, and so the shade darker, I'm using a Depot Olive. You can kind of see the color there. The shade lighter, I'm using a Burlington Northern Green. You can see the color there. And having played with this a little bit, I've discovered that painting the darker color first seems to work the best. So I'm going to take my my Depot Olive, and I've worked with a little of this, so I've got a spot in my palette right here, and I'm just going to dip a few drops of this paint off. It doesn't take very much to do what I need to do on this as I'm painting just a row or so of corn stalks. Of course, again, we've got several rows in the whole box, but so we're going to start with this darker color, and with the dark color, I want to, first of all, I don't want to apply too much paint because I don't want to obliterate the detail of the leaves on the corn stalks. But with a dark color, I want to paint from the bottom up. That way I'm putting the darker color primarily with an emphasis on the bottom of the leaves. And I can get some on the stalk, but I don't need to completely cover it. Some of that green that's molded on can shine through. So I'm going to kind of paint from the bottom up and just kind of highlight the leaves. And again, I can get some on the stalk. If I feel like I get too much on a particular stalk, like it's starting to kind of fill in around the leaves, I can just kind of wipe it off with my finger a little bit, and it's fine. Again, this isn't perfect because this kind of nature type of modeling, nature doesn't look perfect. It has a variety of color and modeled color, and plus the way the sun shines on things and leaves shadows on things makes things different colors. Again, I just want to apply some variety to add some realism to my corn here. And I'm just going to paint each one of those a little bit with this dark color. And I want to do both sides, so I'm going to turn it over and do the other side here. And again, I'm going from the bottom up on each stalk, and I don't need to get too much, just enough to add some variety to the color. And I hope you can begin to see the difference there just with that paint, from the green that it is when it's molded on to this darker green. I'm going to set that one aside. I've got one here that I did earlier where I've already painted the earth and I painted the dark green on. After that dark green is dried, I want to come back and add some highlights of the lighter green. So I'm going to bring in my lighter green color here. This is, again, my Burlington Northern Green in poly scale, but there are all kinds of paints out there. I know poly scale is not available anymore, but Vallejo has tons of colors that'll work great for this, as do many other brands. Just again, if you're choosing a paint that you don't have on hand, maybe take a set of stalks with you and just get something that's, again, just one shade or two lighter and a shade or two darker, and they'll work great. So now, this row set of corn stalks, I've already painted the dark green from the bottom up. Now I'm going to get just a light amount of the light green, and with these I'm going to paint from the top down because I want the lighter colors on the tops of the leaves to kind of show like a sun highlight. And again, I can get some on the stalks is fine, but I don't need to completely paint the stalks. And if I get too much, like I did right there, again, I could just kind of wipe it off with my finger, and it'll be fine. My emphasis here with the light green, though, is on the leaves. Don't care if I get a little on the stalks, but mostly want to brush it on the leaves themselves. And we'll do just a few more on this side. And again, I'm not completing all of this. I just want to give you an example of what we can do and how this will come out. And then we're going to come over to the other side, and we're going to do the same kind of a thing. Just carefully painting a little bit from the top down, just to bring out that highlight and add a little bit of variety of color. Oh, that's looking really, really good. And as it dries, it looks even better. Wipe off a little excess there, and that's already looking a lot better. Now, again, that paint is wet and it changes a little as it dries. But again, compare the monotone green that we started with the variety of green that we've added just by a quick bit of dry brushing onto these stalks. One more thing we want to do to detail these. Again, I'm modeling mid-July, the time when corn would be tasseling. I should mention that Blueford Shops offers these corn stalks in this summer green, but they also offer them in a harvest brown. So the brown color of corn that it would be right before you would harvest it in the fall. And you would paint that differently, but again, using some browns, you could highlight that in the same way. This, however, this would be tasseling corn in late July, and so I want to add some tassels to this to make some more variety still. And so for that, I want a light yellow color, and I want to just touch it on the very top of each of these stalks, just on the very point. Now, there are a lot of colors out there. I didn't have exactly the right color of yellow that I thought on hand. So what I did is I took a bright yellow that I had, and I mixed it with a little bit of a tan flesh color, just to lighten it up a little bit. And for this, I'm going to get, again, I'm using a very small brush. This is an 18-aught pointed brush. You're going to get just a little bit of paint on the tip of it, and I want to just kind of touch, just flick the very point of each one of these. Now remember, I'm modeling an N scale here, so you know, a little goes a long way. If you're modeling an HO scale, you know, you could more easily get you know, a little more paint on there. You would need a little more, and you may want to do more of a dry brushing thing if you're doing this in HO scale, something that's a little bit larger. But just going to put a tassel on each one of those. I'm going to turn it over the other side and put a little bit on the other side in exactly the same way. Just a touch. Now this, if you get a really, really close-up view of this in a photograph, it may not look as perfectly realistic as you would like. But for a scene on your layout where it's going to be seen in passing, especially if it, in my case, it's kind of along the backdrop, this really, really looks spectacular to the viewer and to your operators of your layout. It's really going to come out as looking really, really impressive. So there you get the idea as I've painted that. Let me show you some that I painted earlier. Here's a couple of rows that I've actually got stuck together. They're not glued together, but you can see they have been painted and dried in the two tones of green. I got the brown on the base and got the tassels painted as well. And again, I put these together in a staggered pattern like this, glue them together with a little bit of plastic cement or CA. Really any kind of glue would work great for this. And then before I put them on the layout, I sift some real dirt down through the base part, especially along the front where it's really going to be visible, and just glue it to the base with some scenic cement, being careful not to get that dirt on the corn stalks themselves. And these are going to need a little more twisting. I didn't twist these as much, but I'm going to come in and twist these different ways to just continue to add some more variety to them. And you can do that mostly in the first several rows, and it will give you a greater sense of realism all the way through. If you can just add that twisted detail to the front, it will make it look like they are more varied all the way back through. And these will, I assure you, give you a great looking farm scene and a cornfield scene on your layout. So those are some steps that you can take to prepare these Bluford Shop cornfield cornrows and make them look absolutely spectacular as you put them together, especially if they're along the backdrop of your layout, to make some very realistic looking cornfields that'll make great scenery on your layout. I hope you'll give these techniques a try, and whether you're working in scale or HO scale, these will work fantastic, as these Bluford Shop cornfields are available in both in and HO. Well, I hope you have a fantastic day, and I hope you take some time to allow your model railroad, your layout, your trains to bring some joy to you today. I look forward to seeing you next time.